Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us here on your Wednesday morning. Let's take a look at some of your headlines for you now. Governor Steve Bullock is on the campaign trail, and if you're older than 65, you may have some trouble getting a flu shot in Gallatin County right now. In a moment, we'll explain why. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Wednesday morning. It is 6:30. I'm Missy O'Malley. Chet Lehman has our weather forecast here in just a moment, and Matt Elwell is off today. Top story for you now. A Bozeman man is accused of stabbing and killing his father 2 years ago. He was back in court yesterday to plead guilty. Tanner Franks was charged with deliberate homicide in 2017 after he was accused of stabbing his father, William Franks, in the chest with a knife. MTN's Cody Boyer picks up the story from there.
I lost control of myself, my senses, and I stabbed him to death with a knife.
Tanner Franks stood before Gallatin County District Court Judge Holly Brown as he did 2 years ago. With 4 months left until a 10-day trial, through tears, Franks pleaded guilty.
I sustained years of psychological, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of William Franks.
You knowingly and purposely caused the death of William Franks.
Yes, Your Honor.
In a prepared statement, Franks claimed again that his father's actions led up to what happened.
William Franks was controlling, manipulative, and at times very physically abusive to me and to my family.
Which is not what he said in 2017.
Your Honor, I didn't hurt anybody. I don't know why I'm here. My father's alive.
In court, Judge Brown said the court does not generally accept binding plea agreements and expressed her concern.
In general, I'm not going to accept a binding plea agreement, so I may not accept it.
In the end, Judge Brown accepted Frank's guilty plea, finding him guilty of mitigated deliberate homicide.
So you'd be vacating that trial date if you think for a guilty plea today. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that's what you want to do.
Yes, Your Honor.
In Bozeman, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Now, Franks could face up to 40 years in prison on the count of mitigated deliberate homicide, with an additional 10 years of maximum added to that with weapon enhancement. His sentencing date is scheduled for Monday, December 16th. Chet Lehman joins me now. Boy, windy one yesterday.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the numbers. 64 in Livingston miles per hour. Bozeman Airport had 59, 58 on the pass. Bozeman Pass, Virginia City, 53, 54 out in Churchill, 55 in White Sulphur Springs. We're not going to see that today. That's the good news. We'll see a little wind, but nothing like that. Maybe Friday we will, though. Ooh. More on that. Right now, the big story we're talking about, winter weather advisory in effect until noon today. For that purple shaded areas up around Kings Hill, roads could be a little slick, so do be careful if you're driving out that direction this morning. That'll taper off as we get into the afternoon. That's the good news. Currently in the 30s for the most part. You can see 31 in White Sulphur right now, 33 in Helena, 32 in Dillon. West Yellowstone's dropped down to 30 degrees at this hour. Our planner for today going to warm all the way up into the low 40s. Those few flakes that we could see this morning taper off as skies start to clear a little bit this afternoon. For Butte, we'll stay in the 30s. We'll just keep it that way. And then tonight, teens and 20s for southwest Montana. But there is some good news in store for our Friday. Stick around. Detailed forecast, Missy, coming up in 10 minutes.
Wow, thanks for that, Chet. Now, 6:33. A former Montana Western football player pleaded no contest on Tuesday morning in a sexual assault case in Dillon. KYRIN Allen pleaded no contest to a charge of criminal endangerment in district court in connection with the sexual assault of a woman in Dillon. In October of last year, he was initially charged with sexual intercourse without consent, but that charge was reduced, and now Allen is free on bond. And the state Supreme Court says the city of Missoula does not have the authority to enact background checks on guns sold within city limits. Now, the Missoula gun ordinance Supreme Court reverses decision on that ordinance passed in 2016, which caused major public debate in Missoula. It required background checks on private gun sales. And at that time, the city of Missoula enacted the ordinance to, quote, close a loophole in federal law, unquote, that permits firearm transfers involving private unlicensed dealers to be completed without a background check, and that could facilitate the transfer of guns to convicted felons and other people barred from owning firearms. Now, the Montana Supreme Court ruled that ordinance went too far beyond keeping guns away from convicted felons, minors, and the mentally ill. That case will now be sent back to Missoula County District Court. And new for you this morning, some residents of Bozeman are being asked to conserve water, but just for one day. The city says the second temporary shutdown of Sourdough's main line is happening today from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is the second half of the first phase of a $2 million project improving about 2,800 feet of water main pipe from the Bozeman Water Treatment Plant to the city of Bozeman. Now, this will be the new pipe replacing the older one, the smaller one, increasing the amount of water that flows into the city.
This is the weak spot in the system. We have one pipe going to town for 80% of the water. So if that pipe breaks, we're in trouble. So this is providing some security for us to send water to town and everyone to have water.
Now, the next phase of the project will begin at an undetermined time next year. Of course, we will keep you updated. And he's still pretty low in the national polls, but Governor Steve Bullock is starting to make a name for himself in the Midwest. And we're just 4 months out from the Iowa caucus, the first caucus of the country. Kent Lutzen is on the road with Bullock and has more.
There are 105 days, not that I'm counting, between now and caucus.
His name isn't at the top of most charts. However, a poll released by Emerson Polling shows Montana Governor Steve Bullock in 6th amongst Iowa voters, outpacing many of the other 2020 presidential candidates, beating him in those national polls.
I've been able to convert those voters already. And also, we got a lot of rural areas in Nebraska and Iowa. Democrats don't always compete well in those areas. I can compete real well in making that connection with folks, urban and rural.
The Iowa caucus is less than 4 months out on February 3rd. Monday, Bullock wasted no time with potential voters, talking to a crowd at the Council Bluffs Library.
I want to see everybody I possibly can, whether I agree with them or not. Governor Bullock is a down-to-earth, common-sense man.
I'm not committed yet. I'm anxious to just hear what everybody has to say, and I'll make my decision.
One of the key issues in 2020 will be swing voters, voters that maybe voted for President Trump in 2016 that could be persuaded to vote blue this coming election. And Governor Steve Bullock says he has experience doing just that, especially in rural America.
If we can't make connections in those areas, we're not going to win. And I've made the connections, won 3 times in a red state, not by compromised values, but by actually getting stuff done.
Bullock has visited Iowa 14 times and says he will continue to work on his ground game as other Democratic candidates focus on the debate stage.
Now, Bullock is polling around 1% in most national polls, and he's made only one of those Democratic national debate stages. Closer to home in Gallatin City County, Health Department says there has been a temporary shortage of flu vaccines for people over the age of 65. People over that age get a higher dose vaccine, and that's been in shorter supply compared to the regular flu shot vaccine. Officials say bad weather and some shipment delays have affected the supply around the nation. And there were also some delays with the World Health Organization.
The World Health Organization every year, when they're formulating the flu vaccine, they're really watching what's happening in the southern hemisphere to find out what strains of the vaccine are circulating. They delayed that this year a bit because they were waiting for some additional information to make the vaccine even more effective.
The health department says there is no serious long-term shortage. Officials say if you are unable to find that high-dose flu shot at your normal provider, try reaching out to another. Now, the county health department will be holding a walk-in flu shot clinic today from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is time for a quick break here on your lovely Wednesday morning. Coming up, have you had a conversation with someone or